I was born into a military family in Washington, and so that means we would move around every 2 years, and so I was never really able to find my identity in any place for too long. I was also born into a family where my dad was white and my mom was Filipino, and so I had a lot of cultural identity confusion growing up. I was too white for Filipinos and too Filipino for white people, and that just contributed to a lot of confusion and a lack of identity as to who I was supposed to be. I also grew up in a family where my dad was Protestant and my mom was Catholic, and I personally grew up Catholic, but I always knew that my dad was different and that other people could be different, and it just led to even more confusion about who I was supposed to be and how I was supposed to interact with the world and what I was supposed to believe about God. So fast forward to my middle school years. After moving around a bunch, our house had just foreclosed and we moved out to Monterey. And during that time, during middle school and the first 2 years of high school, I really started to try and find myself and really explore my identity and who I was supposed to be. I tried to find my identity in things like music and in accomplishments and friends, and a lot of these things really felt good during the time. It was really fun. I got to go out and I got to really see the world more for myself than I could before, because I was younger. But as I was building up these things for myself, I had essentially a bomb just dropped on me one day, and my family decided to uproot completely again and move to the middle of nowhere to a town called Prunedale. I felt like God had just taken every single thing that I was building up for myself away. He stripped me of the identity that I finally thought that I had, and just like it didn't even matter. And it just made me feel like a nobody. I just realized that all of these things, none of them were eternal, none of them were satisfying, and they could just be taken away in a heartbeat. And so during those months, towards the end of my sophomore year of high school, I just welled up with bitterness and resentment and despair. I'd always believed in God, but during that time, I just acted as if He didn't exist, and I did the things that I knew that were wrong in His eyes. And it was my way of just pretending like He didn't exist so I could finally do what I want for once. And it was during that bitterness and despair that finally crushed me, where Jesus met me, and He reminded me that all of these things, they just lead to emptiness and they lead to darkness, and there's nowhere, there's just nothingness there. And He reminded me that that He calls me a child, that He loves me and that He cares for me, and that He went to the cross for me. And during that time, it just absolutely floored me, this idea. I was in my room and I just broke down in tears, and He called me a child. During the next few months, I completely had a reorienting of my life. I repented and I turned around, and I just began to sink myself into God's Word and define myself as He defines me. And since then, I've just walked with Him, and I've known that He is the one who sets my identity on stone, and He is my consistency, and He's the one thing that will never be taken away from me. I used to be a nobody, and now I'm a child. That's my story. That's yours.